Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to a new episode of Social Convos. I'm your host, Diego, together with my co host, Sean-Luc. Sean-Luc, welcome back to a fresh new week.
Yes, and I want to say something. I'm seeing that we're streaming on youtube.com/Confoes. So what has changed there?
Yeah, we're going all in with the branding, so the channel has been revamped. You'll still find the channel with the old link, but it's easier now, just YouTube slash at Convos. We got the Convos handle, so
Wow,
keeping the
wow.
branding consistent.
Wow, that's impressive. Of course, we're also live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on X. It sounds weird to say we're live on X, but we're
Before
live
we
on
go
X.
into X, also give us a follow on
On
Instagram
Instagram,
at
yes.
Confoes and Threads at Confoes.
Oh, yes, and threads. Very well, very well. So, how's your threads experience been so far?
I opened up the account. Well, opened up is kind of weird saying. Basically, you just got to opt into it from your
You opted
Instagram
in
account.
for Instagram threads, yes?
But then it sends you to the App Store to first download a separate app and then to authenticate. So I find the whole user experience quite cumbersome. Like, what the hell do you want for people to do? And now we got this whole thing with Elon and Twitter with the rebranding to X. So this makes me wonder what's going on with these heavy hitters. What's going on with Mark Zuckerberg? What's going on with Elon Musk? All these big players in the space kind of starting new platforms, rebranding. Is it just hype? Is it just gaining
So,
attention?
no,
What's
there
your
are
take?
definitely some things that I want to get into when it comes to X, but I'll explain that in a second. To first say Instagram threads, because we briefly touched upon Instagram threads in a previous episode. And so far, there are two things that have stuck out. The first thing that I really noticed is, and was hard to understand, there are no hashtags, or at least there's no hashtag function for search, which means that for now on threads, hashtags are rendered useless.
Yeah, so it's basically you're at the mercy of the timeline, basically your
Yes,
home
you're
timeline and
you're
the algorithm.
pretty much at the which puts you in a disadvantage if you're a smaller threader, definitely. Um, I wouldn't say the threats of the bigger accounts are necessarily better, but having a huge following definitely helps percentage wise.
What do you mean
To
with percentage wise?
Okay,
Like as
so
in getting a
say
engagement?
you would get you say threats is about 3% engagement per following right now, like on average. Say I'm not saying that's the actual average, but to give an example, most people on threads have less than 100 followers. So that's the first thing to consider, right? Most people on threads have less than 100 followers, so most people will struggle to get over three engagement per thread. That's just something in general. And then you have a couple of people, or thousands of, maybe even a million people that have over 100 followers. They get some traction. And then the bigger accounts that have hundreds of thousand followers, because their target audience on Instagram already is on threads, if they get 3%, if you have 100,000, most of them
Sure.
don't get close to 3,000 engagements.
Can
That's
you
that's
repeat that
really
last
rare.
part? Because you just cut out. I think your
Oh,
internet just
sorry.
cut out.
Okay, so if you have like 100 followers and you have like three people who tune into your thread, it's like 3% engagement rate, right? Or I wouldn't say engagement rates because I don't know how many people you reach, but at
Uh,
least 3% of your follower engages. So imagine you have 100,000 followers on threads. That would mean that you would have to get 3,000 people
Yeah.
engaging to get 3%. which I feel is a tall order. I'm just gonna.
It's high. Yeah,
It's really
that's
high.
ridiculously high.
That's like I'm quickly gonna go to the most popular threats at the moment in my timeline, and there will be around, like, if you're lucky, you're around like 300, like 3, 4 to 36 to 1.
So
Did
one thing I want
a
to mention
thousand
on
plus?
my
Yeah,
first impression on threads,
yeah,
it's yeah, basically people compare it to Twitter, also known as X now. But
yeah.
to stay on the topic of threads a bit, I've noticed that a lot of people post with a photo. So this brings the question like Instagram was the photo first, but I see people posting photos and then with a caption. And in this case, the caption is on top.
Oh,
Whereas
we're
you're the
just
only
experimenting.
person.
We're
Sorry?
experimenting. I'm not the only person. We're experimenting. Like, everybody's
No.
experimenting.
Yeah. So from what I've seen, like most of the accounts I
Yeah.
see in the timeline, it's basically very photo based. I think yours and maybe one or two other accounts are the only accounts that show up in my feed that are text only.
That's really
And
interesting.
you just mentioned it doesn't have hashtags, right? So
Yeah.
that brings the question: is it very much like photo driven, or how does the algorithm basically curate for the users?
So, let's see how many threads I have so far. I have quite some threads. So, one, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12 threads so far, right? Of those 12 threads, 4 or 5 are actually with a photo.
Yeah.
So it's not actually, I'm also posting photos, and they get about the same or even a little bit better engagement, to be honest. The photos, yeah, the photos get better engagements than the text only so far. So it's really experimenting, because it's similar to Twitter, and I'm actually running the experiment now. Twitter or X versus Instagram threads versus DBoss, because I'm also active on Hive, and DBoss is one of the, not the only one, but one of the microblogging platforms on Hive. And what I'm trying to figure out, if you're like a smaller creator, does it make sense, if you want to instantly monetize, to go over to a web-based microblogging platform, a Web3 based microblogging platform, because you can earn crypto through microblogging instantaneously, now without having to have a big following or being in the support system or partner system of, because Elon Musk also announced that people, Twitter Blue, kind of, if they're big enough creators, they also earn as a creator as well. That's kind of implemented in the system. So I'm really wondering to see, like, okay, but for a small creator, how easy is it to get into that system versus microblogging on Web3 and actually earning directly with a payout after 7 days. So basically, that's the idea behind the research I'm doing.
And on the topic of you brought up like Hive again, right? And one thing that I noticed on the sign up for threads was, I'm not sure if it was on the sign up, but it's part of a different ecosystem, right? It starts in an F. I can't find a name at the moment. Was it Pediment or something like that? Basically, the idea, what I read through it was that you'd engage just like it is on Hive and Peak, that everything in the backend is on one thing, but the interface is different. So I'm thinking here now, like, are they copying the ideology of the decentralization, or basically having the niche communities with its own separate interface? Hence, you have threads and Instagram, whereas if you're photo oriented, you go on Instagram, but it's the same account. That's why your threads account is linked to your Instagram account, and you can't decouple them. So
So
that's what. That's how
Okay,
my brain was basically processing that.
okay. So I want to answer this question like at a later stage because I want to jump into X.
All right, all
So
right.
when the question comes now, are you an Xer? What do you say?
The hell are you talking about?
So the Xer has kind of a negative connotation in the sense like an Xer is often, especially I'm watching a series, a Netflix series now, Manifest, where an Xer is definitely somebody who's bad. That's somebody who spray paints. Oh well, according to some it's actually good, but somebody that spray paint houses of those that were involved in the whole story and basically threatening them or attacking them or even killing off members of that specific group. And an Xer in general is somebody from Generation X. So that would mean you were born in the 60s or 70s mainly and are now in the 50s, even 60s already, late 40s, 50s, 60s. So that would
Isn't
be an
it
Xer
boomers
now.
already? Or
No,
is it post
boomers
boomers?
is 60 above.
Oh, so X is right after boomer, right?
Boom,
Then you got a Y
boomers
and
boomers were born after the Second World War, so that's 40, the 40s and the 50s. So that would be 60 plus, 70 plus. Those would be the boomers. The Xers are often the people in charge now in the world in general, like at big corporations. They're around late 40s, 50s, 60s, early 60s. So that's the X generation. And basically, if you're saying Xers, we would normally refer to them as Generation X. But now, apparently, or at least how I'm ascribing it is, an Xer is somebody who uses X, which is Twitter. So for those of you who missed the memo,
do you
no,
think it caught on?
no, of course it hasn't caught on. People probably haven't realized it yet. So for those who have missed it, Twitter is now rebranding to X. So Twitter.com is still the main platform with all the data. But if you go to X.com, are being redirected to Twitter. And Elon Musk has already launched that Twitter is becoming X, and the idea is that it will be an all-in-one super app, and I think mainly inspired by WeChat.
I can see that, yeah.
Yes.
I can definitely
So,
see that.
so where it really becomes interesting is um, where it really becomes interesting is the payment system that they're going to implement. Of course, even if it's as a joke, if
Those.
Elon manages to get Doge in as a payment system on Twitter, that will be massive. That will be huge because you will have millions of people who are saying like, "Oh, this is cool. I can actually pay with Doge now." I mean, yes, Robin, I will actually going to say that for Doge users, it's pretty cool, and it's especially cool for Doge users that live in countries with inferior banking systems because for us it's no use if yes X payments is now available on Twitter and you can do this and this, but you still have to have a credit card through a Western bank or something like that. So from that perspective, micropayments for microblogging is something that it's really being underutilized, and that's why I'm actually excited to talk about DBoss a little and those kind of platforms because it will open people's eyes up to like, and this goes with a tweet that I read by one of the creators I follow on Twitter, who's Roberto Blake, and he basically says, "Listen, you have to decide if you want to go for monetization, commit to monetization. If you want to go for the biggest reach, commit to the biggest reach. If you want to go for sales, go for sales. Go for whatever you think is fit." So if you want to go for monetization, choose the platform that gives you the best opportunity to monetize. If you care about having a big following or a big community, choose the platform that caters best to that platform. And with X, basically it's making it easier for, at least that's the vision that I envision that Elon has. It's easier to give payments, to give micro payments to creators, and peer-to-peer payments, because at the moment there's no peer-to-peer payments in the traditional
No.
social media space. There just isn't. So if X is the first to pull it off, that we have peer-to-peer payment systems where
Well,
you get
in the
like a,
Western social media, right? Because as you
yes,
mentioned, WeChat,
WeChat isn't a global social
basically.
media. I mean,
Yeah.
I have yet to hear of somebody saying, I don't live in China, but I can pay with WeChat. I might have missed the memo if that's already possible. If I have WeChat in Suriname and somebody else has WeChat in
I
the US
think
or
I
Netherlands
remember, like, I went hotpotting. They had WeChat,
to pay,
if I'm not mistaken.
okay, we have to check that out.
Yeah, it was a year or two ago. I do remember because I had the WeChat.
Well, WeChat is pretty big here
I
in a
didn't check,
certain
but
community,
yeah,
but the payment, or how does that work? Do you have to use it? Actually, we have to figure this out because it will be
yeah, but
interesting. Yeah.
I assume it's from the Chinese community, right? Because they're involved in it. They have a deeper connection with it and deeper exposure with it as well. So yeah, in that case,
Yeah.
I do understand it. And if you're talking about the payment onboarding processes for Western media, then yeah, everything goes to the traditional banking, credit card, etc. And that's what's struggling for the majority of people, especially Latin America, because they don't have access. Like, I don't know the percentage, but a big percentage of people don't have that access, and having a alternative or in-app payment system or tokenized system is a possibility for them. It doesn't matter how they get it; they should be able to transact. That's what's the important part.
Okay. Um, so what I quickly want to pull up for a second, just to give people a general idea of what the situation is at the moment. I'm going to pull up some statistics from the 10 biggest platforms at the moment. We're not going to go into the discussion whether or not WhatsApp or chatting apps are social media or not. That's a discussion for another day. But as you can see, Facebook is now at around 3 billion users, which is really interesting because I feel the last time I checked, they were over 3 billion. So there might be a
Users or
small,
accounts, so basically
I
accounts
would say accounts. Active
in
users
the
would be accounts.
individual accounts, right?
Yes, these will be
This
individual accounts.
this
So
is
close
not
to
accounting
3
business
billion,
accounts.
3 billion accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's best. I'm assuming it's users. YouTube is second with um, 2.5 billion accounts. I'm not sure how they measure this, to be honest.
So my take here is
Yeah.
why YouTube is significantly less, because YouTube from the early ages was more public than Facebook, in the sense, right? You didn't need a YouTube account, or you still don't need a YouTube account to consume YouTube content. Whereas for Facebook, they slowly gone that route, especially with business accounts. But in the beginning, you needed an account to view the things on Facebook. So I think that's the how Facebook kind of leapt over YouTube. If
No,
you're
it was
talking
always
about
Facebook.
user,
It was
yeah.
always Facebook. It was
No,
never
but
YouTube. Yeah.
I mean the difference, the delta that you have there.
Yeah, but we don't
You're
know. It could be more. It could be 500 million people using YouTube without logging in. It could be
exactly.
a billion people. We have no
So
idea. So
that's
we
what I
also
mean.
have no
That's why
idea. Yeah.
this data is kind of, you're not comparing apples to oranges. And I didn't want to bring up the WhatsApp, but WhatsApp
Yeah.
is purely peer to peer or user to user. There is no
Yeah.
public WhatsApp web page that you can
That's
go
that's
to.
the discussion. That's definitely
Yeah,
the discussion because you do have status updates and you do have groups and you do now have the feature that people can voluntarily put themselves in groups. So it's becoming more and more public domain. It
yeah,
isn't fully
but I mean,
utilized. Yeah.
yeah, like the
And
origin, like how it went.
WhatsApp ads are not there yet, but if we get to WhatsApp ads, it's definitely depending on how they roll it out, it's definitely being interesting. What I find really interesting is that WhatsApp and Instagram are tied. That wasn't the case half a year ago. There was a clear difference in users there. from what I can recollect, at least from last year. So that's
Was
kind
which
of
one was higher?
oh, WhatsApp was way higher than Instagram.
Mm,
So
mm.
that's a really interesting thing. So I don't know if the WhatsApp usage shrank due to the fact that more people went to Telegram, more people went to Signal. There's kind of a loss of trust in that regard, or that Instagram just grew. The growth was rapid. And then what's interesting is that the next biggest, the number five, is WeChat. So I think that's one of the interesting. That's why I brought this graph up, because it's still 1.3. And then TikTok, which is really interesting because TikTok, Snapchat was never as high as TikTok is. Twitter was never as high as TikTok is. They were never close to hitting 1 billion users. TikTok has over a billion users. What's just interesting is Facebook Messenger is continuously declining on this list. Continuously is going to drop further and further because there's technically little to no development in Facebook Messenger, and people just don't want to have the app on their phone. And that's actually the thing with Facebook Messenger, which could become a concern with Instagram threads. Facebook Messenger, the main problem was that you couldn't log out of Facebook Messenger without deleting the app from your phone. So a lot of people have also given up on Messenger because they're better messaging apps. Even WhatsApp is much better. So slowly that's going away. And then you see Douyin, and Douyin is actually the Chinese version of TikTok. So I think TikTok is still called Douyin in China. So I also don't know how that works with TikTok and Douyin both being on them. And what really surprised me, Diego, I don't ever remember seeing another messaging app like Telegram in the top 10. That's
Telegram
completely new. And
was
Snapchat was not in the top
niche.
10. I don't recall that. I could be mistaken, but Telegram being in the top 10 is really interesting. And Snapchat as well, which means that even though Snapchat is kind of like on the down, or at least it felt like it from a business perspective, Telegram still has more monthly users than both Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest. So I found that really interesting, to be honest.
On the topic of payments, there's a question coming in like on the Brazil and payment feature. I remember a few years ago, like 1 or 2 years ago, that WhatsApp basically introduced payments in Brazil. I haven't seen any
Okay.
significant updates on it. I'm not sure if it's
Oh,
adopted.
they're trying it again. They're trying it again. So here's the full story on why specifically Brazil. Because if you think geographically, because WhatsApp payments are embedded into WhatsApp, and you think, oh, we're next to Suriname is next to Brazil, we're gonna be a close second, or
Nope.
we will be no. So to clarify the whole WhatsApp Brazil payment feature, it has to do with Brazil's security number. So in Brazil, your social security number is directly connected with your bank, or it's directly connected with your finances. So in Brazil, a lot of things you are able to pay them on a monthly basis. I think I've seen some cases, I could be wrong, but I think I even see some cases where you could even buy food with monthly payments. Maybe I'm going too extreme, but like really stuff that you would regularly think like, why would you do installments for that? They would have a payment system that you could do it in monthly installments. So that's really interesting. And the reason they
It's
are able to do it is because
yeah,
of the social security system being tied up to personal finances, meaning if you miss a payment in Brazil, you're blacklisted.
yeah, it's going on your record, and I
Yeah.
have mixed views on that because it's basically introducing the credit system, and not only basically in improved version of the credit system to LATAM, and Brazil being the biggest demographic. If you compare the US is what 380, 350 million population, whereas Brazil is around 200, 250 million, in that range. It is the biggest blood in the Western Hemisphere. southwestern hemisphere of
Yeah.
people concentrated. So if you're gonna try something, you might as well try it there. And they already have that
But
infrastructure
they're
in
only
place.
able to try it there because of the infrastructure.
Yeah,
And
the
that make
infrastructure.
that it's not as extreme as China, where everything is included, but it's the closest thing Meta could find to battle WeChat's superiority when it comes to being a payment app combined with a social app. So that makes sense why Brazil was chosen. So that makes it really interesting. But I mean, there aren't that many countries that have that structure set up. So it will be interesting to see. And now we get back to X. It will be interesting to see how Twitter responds to that. And the last thing I want to say in the introduction to this topic is that, and I'm just going to say Twitter from now on because X is not really a thing for anybody at the moment. But the real interesting thing about Twitter is that with this rebranding by Elon, it does feel that it's the first time that Twitter is on the attack. So that's real. It's always been this platform trying to buy Twitter, this platform trying to compete with Twitter. And now finally, it's Twitter saying, I'm going to compete with the rest. I'm going to go a step beyond. And what's interesting, because we mentioned the threats thing and the threats being part of Instagram and actually being called Instagram a threats app because a threats Instagram app because threads.com was already claimed. Um, the name change from Twitter to X is a big long term play in the sense that we have had Find, we've had Periscope, which are kind of it's a Twitter app. We've had Twitter Spaces, which is like a functionality of
Yeah.
Twitter. So we have had several situations where Twitter came in with something new, whether it was like a daughter app or a function or a functionality or a feature within the app. But now
And they got
saying like,
destroyed.
no, yeah, now we're gonna change our core and we're gonna rebrand our core and all. I think it's a big power move. I mean, people might not agree that it will succeed,
So would
but
you
it's basically
say it?
saying we've been stuck here at 400 million users, kind of not growing for years. We're gonna do something different.
So if you would have to gauge the impact of this rebranding from Twitter as the main company to X, would you
Yeah.
say it has the same weight as like what Facebook did with Meta
No,
and
it's
what
more. It has
Google
more
did with
weight.
Alphabet?
It has more weight. It has more weight. The Facebook
Why do you
logo
say that?
never changed.
Yeah.
The Facebook logo never got a meta element. Yes, WhatsApp and Instagram are now considered a meta app or an app by Meta, but this is like a complete rebranding, which makes a lot of people upset because if you have all your personal branding on Twitter with a bird, and now all of a sudden Elon killed off the bird, you have to rebrand everything. All the designs, all of your design
I
work, everything.
I do still it's still a very small percentage and I think they can capitalize on it. I don't see that as too much of a issue for most people,
You
personally
don't see it
speaking.
because you're not that invested in the bird. Like if you have it on all your merch, if you have the bird on all your merch, imagine how much that rebranding will cost you. If you're truly known as a Twitter expert, it's really weird to now also say an expert. Like an
That's why I say
expert.
it's I don't think it'll catch on as fast yet, because it still carries weight because tweeting has become a verb that people use.
Yes.
What's tweeting? It's become
Yeah.
part of culture. So having this huge rebrand and thinking like from this week or next month that people are gonna say, I'm gonna X,
No,
it doesn't make sense.
I'm gonna exhibit. I'm gonna be exhibiting. That's the best one I saw. That's the
that
best one I
that's
saw.
just reaching. That's just reaching.
Yeah. So, but
Like,
I do feel it's a power move. It's Elon saying, "I'm going in all or nothing," and I think it is important. It shows that you're well aware that something has to drastically change for you to be taken serious in this space. Because I'll show it once again. I'll bring it in screen one more time. These are the 10 biggest social media platforms according to Statistica.
yeah, Twitter is not even on
And
here.
Twitter
Like,
is not on it.
Telegram past Twitter. That says a lot.
Yes. So it's just saying, like, hey, Twitter is stuck. So it's time to try something new.
So another parallel that I wanted to draw in terms of the announcement and the type of rebranding, and we spoke last week on Threads, right? And we said Threads.com, they didn't even put in the effort to get it. They just used Threads.net, and Elon, or basically Twitter, they went to the effort to get X.com compared to something like what Meta tried to do and launch their new product. And they're doing this with their mainline products, basically their flagship product, Twitter. And a few other comments that I saw a lot were the way it's been done. Basically, they didn't go fully in stealth mode to switch everything overnight and have everything as X. It just literally, just the logo, just the loading screen is an X. It's basically making a statement. This is happening. So, what do you think of those approaches of announcing the rebrand, like gradually and
It's weird
switching it?
because I don't know exactly when it happened, right? You know, like normally it's like on this day, this app launched. I have
Yeah,
no idea when it's launched. If it's 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I have
I,
no
I
idea.
saw the logo, I think last night.
Yeah, so we don't really know because it's still transitioning. So it's
Yeah, it's
really
basically
hard
a
to
stealth
pinpoint,
move,
say like
a
on
stealth
this date, Twitter
gradual. Yeah,
became X. Yeah. So that makes it different already.
because and this brings a lot of conversation to it, right? It's basically the people are gonna market it for you. There's like, how could they do this? This isn't even proper branding. You didn't go through the processes of traditional branding. You didn't think about the merch. You didn't think about, oh, it should change on the app as well. You just announced it with the main website logo. That's it. So this brings a lot of attention, and you talked about getting the attention, right? So Twitter, with Elon's personal brand as well, is getting all that attention for free with this simple move. So how does this compare to your traditional? Yeah, it sounds weird to say now. Traditional social media marketing uh, branding strategies.
No, but I mean, like a rebrand? Like, I feel like none of the three main plot lines this year, whether it's AI with ChatGPT, whether it's Thread by Instagram, and whether it's X by Twitter, none of them follow the traditional launch route. None of them did. So if you're gonna
Agreed.
ask, so if you're gonna ask, uh, which one is the most, and that's the question that was actually asked on Facebook, I think by Social Media Examiner, like which one do you feel was the best? And I'm like, seriously? Like one has been around less than a week, the other has been around less than a month, and the other one hasn't even been here a year. So how do you want me to assess the situation? I have no idea yet. Another thing that I found interesting, and this is one thing that I did want to bring up, is when you go on threads, the most active person talking about threats is not the CEO of threads, but rather the CEO of Instagram. And that's something I found very peculiar.
Okay.
So the
Do they
CEO of
CEOs have names?
threads,
Because I'm not familiar with the CEO
no,
names.
so the CEO of threads actually, I think, has less than 1,000 followers at the moment. Has not really been active this past week. Whereas all the major announcements and things, of course, the Threads app is really active. I have to compliment the marketing team from Threads itself. The Threads app has been really active, that account. But the main, like, Elon is speaking towards Twitter kind of situation is coming from the CEO of Instagram and not from the CEO of Threads. So that's a really interesting thing. I think even Zuckerberg is more active on Threads than the CEO of Threads, and also has a much bigger following, of course, because they know Mark Zuckerberg, and so I think that's also plays a role.
Yeah, because
Um,
I've never heard of. I
I don't
can't even
think you
guess who
even
the
know
CEO
the
of Thread
no,
is.
I don't think
And
you
I
even
don't
know
even know
the
from
CEO
Instagram
of
either.
Instagram. No,
No,
so that's what made it really interesting, and I think what with Twitter that's really interesting is, are people gonna buy into Elon Musk? That's at the end of the day something that's going to be really important because Elon has a more when people look at Elon, it's more of a more polarized opinion
yeah,
than than
that's an
than most
understatement. It's a
CEOs.
quite a polarized
So there are
statement.
people who are really running away when I was saying like, "Hey, Elon is just a genius. He's brilliant," and there's really people saying like, "Yeah, I don't believe him at all."
But also the track record that Elon has, and this isn't to say it's proof, but it's quite diverse of the things he's done. Whereas Mark, for example, has been contained in the online social media space. Elon has diversified in payments with PayPal, in space tech with SpaceX, in electrical vehicles. So it's a whole different ballgame with the baggage they have, like the diversity in that.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting, what is a big advantage and a disadvantage for Elon is he will diversify Twitter's portfolio like he has done with all his companies. So there will all be these separate entities going all around and this kind of experiment and this experiment and this experiment, which will lead to better innovation, to be honest. Because to
I
be
agree.
completely honest, Instagram threads, the verdict for me isn't out. I still use it on a daily basis, but there's really no innovation in threads. As of now, all the features on threads are available somewhere else.
On the contrary, it's basically they eliminated features. You can't even DM.
Well,
You're,
they're working on
you
certain
can't
features.
hashtag.
They're listening to the feedback and they have already put in a for you and a following page, which is good, which is not enrolled in my app. I mean, I still cannot switch between for you and following, but at
What's that?
least so basically when you're on
Oh,
threads,
basically a
right,
tab,
you
right?
see
Like
like
yeah,
random things of people that you
yeah.
don't
You
follow.
you get the
So
algorithm recommended based on your
yes,
tastes and
exactly.
the follow only. Yeah.
So that's one thing that they have to do. I'm wondering, I don't think they're going to implement the list feature because the list feature in Twitter is also kind of died off, which used to be one of the best features, really. And I think they will definitely crack down on bots. If they're if people start using bots on Instagram threads, they will
No, for
kill that
sure.
as
Like
soon as
that
possible.
was one of the biggest issues on Twitter as well,
Yeah.
right? Like I remember watching a YouTube video and they reference an article about probably in the next 2 to 3 years, most of the content on the internet, more than 50%, will be bots and AI. Like the content that's being generated, the content that's being commented, crawled, it's gonna be majority based generated and less human, whereas the humans are gonna be the consumers. So that's the kind of the doomsday scenario, and that we all be zombified watching our screens and doom scrolling.
Why does this feel like a Black Mirror episode?
I
That's
really should
terrible.
pick it up. I really should pick
No,
it up to get the
that
reference because
sounds.
I I hear that reference a lot. Like, oh, Black Mirror is coming. It's like close at hand.
Yeah, no, I think that things with Black Mirror are a little bit too extreme. Like it could, but it's kind of not. It's not going to be mainstream. It could happen to somebody, but it's not mainstream. But it's scary because a lot of it's kind of it's very sci-fi-ish in the sense that yeah, this could happen in 30 years. Basically, the tech is there, but it really happening could only be in 30 years. So that's the scary part about it.
Yeah,
But
it's within our lifetime.
yeah, but it's not like there are gonna be ways to avoid it. So that's the good news. But it's still scary stuff. It's still scary because there are already people in the world that are acting as scammers that they can do things that are being done in Black Mirror. And luckily for our society right now, they're not that tech advanced and far along yet. But once they get, and hopefully they never get their hands on it, it's gonna be very scary stuff.
Yeah, because the gaps in generation with the tech advancement and those who are, capable, it's getting wider. So to close this off to the final section, I want to bring back the topic on that you
I just
postponed
want to jump
earlier.
on this. I want to jump on this as well, last before we go to final topic. There's scary things happening on Facebook, and that's why we're moving to even on the social space to the know your customer kind of having to have a government ID. That's so for people who are wondering, like for instance, why I do the subscribe to verifications that come along. Um, I do feel like if I have a public platform that I do want it verified for that platform to know it's me, to verify it with a government ID, just because if I get hacked, I can prove like I'm hacked, right? So that's one of the reasons. And then you get into the situation. I had something really weird happen to me. So the day before Japanese New Year, my settings of my Facebook profile got switched to a dialect, an Indonesian dialect in English.
Hmm.
It was really weird. So I opened up Facebook and there was this dialect in Indonesian English which I couldn't understand. I frantically searched to change the language a couple of times. I changed the language. It still stayed on. I think I went to Dutch even, and it stayed on Indonesian Dutch. Really weird stuff. And then in the end, I went through my log, activity log, to see if I was hacked and somebody was else, and there was nothing there.
Yeah, so I had that quite a few years ago. It changed to some Russian language. So I don't remember what the cause was, but it was something either cached in the browser or some external
Yeah,
thing. So it's
yeah,
client side.
yeah,
So I don't think it's your account per se, but it makes it seem like you've been hacked. So it's a
yeah.
client injection
So it was
of some
really
sort.
weird. It was really weird. And then after a day, it was gone. It was not on my page. It was just on my profile. It was really extremely weird experience. Like software just they tried to recognize something that didn't make sense. But go on to your last question.
Yeah. So we brought up the payment thing. Need to get my train of thought again. The payment thing, and the similarities of Threads and Instagram to having that one ecosystem where everything in the backend is interconnected, but the interface, the UI, and how you engage with it, how you interact with it, is different for everyone. So if you're more photo oriented, you'll go to Instagram. If you're more short threads oriented, you'll go to Threads. Similar to how Hive has created like different user interfaces for if you're blog oriented, if you're finance oriented, they have different skins, so to speak, and different mini ecosystems within it, but everything is still connected within on one account. That's why I said like the Instagram being connected with your Threads account is intrinsically linked. So what you post on Threads also is coupled to your IG, but based on the preferences, people get it delivered differently. So, how do you see those similarities between the hype ecosystem and how Threads, Meta, Instagram is moving into this one ecosystem?
It's interesting, but then in that sense, you would have more apps surfacing.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if they're going to go that direction.
So that's why I think Threads is the first experiment with that.
It's interesting because you can rapidly build and you can take overtake all the smaller, like we discussed last time, and you've seen it on the graph today. If you Instagram has over 2 billion users, and they come up with these new apps, and 10% of those users go onto that app, it's already kind of like a top 25 app in user
Yeah.
base, which has been the strategy for Facebook in quite some time with these new kind of functionalities. Just look at an app that's super successful that gets to 100 million users, take those features and replicate them for a billion users, and you end up winning. And I'm not sure that strategy, how long that strategy is gonna last, because people will also get tired. And I think with threats, we've already seen a massive decline in active users because everybody's like, okay, let's try it out. Oh, okay, it's really difficult. I mean, I can post a picture on Instagram and get 500 likes. I post a thread and I get like 3 likes. Okay, maybe this is not for me. It's kind of the Twitter, Facebook dilemma which we had as a country like 5 years, 10 years ago. So it's not really that easy to um, and if the app is good, it's gonna survive. And if the app's not that good, it's slowly gonna die off. And that's why I think
Mhm.
and that's why I think the X move by Twitter is like such an interesting move because if it becomes a super app, you get a lot of different use. And I think one of the things that people underestimate, Snapchat has really grown. And one of the reasons why Snapchat has really grown is the top creators on Snapchat get paid a lot, like really a lot. And Snapchat has basically decided, like, okay, we don't have to make any profits, but we're gonna grow that we can't be denied. TikTok
But
has,
that's
yeah,
but that's a strategy for a lot of startups, right? Grow, you get market share before
but
even
the
thinking
interesting
about
thing,
profit.
Snapchat is no longer a startup.
Yeah, but I agree. It is still has startup roots, and not many startups graduate to that level. That's what I
Interesting.
want to
So
say.
TikTok is also a startup still.
Yeah,
And what about Twitter?
kind of could be both.
Because it's kind of like
Well,
it's a fight. It's really a fight for
well,
intention.
look, now Twitter is going the direction because Twitter wasn't profitable. Now with Elon's intervention, they're basically looking for models to get profitable by themselves.
Yeah.
They were living off of investment stock money. That's the difference. Like a lot of startups, they die because they run out of runway, because they run out of investor money, and they can't transition into having a sustainable business model. That's why a lot of these early apps that we've seen in the past decade, like Clubhouse, they introduce a feature, they grow rapidly, they
And then that
pitch the
feature gets
inventors.
stolen and then it's gone.
Yeah,
Because like it's not like Twitter Spaces is as big as it was when it killed off Clubhouse.
exactly. And you don't hear anything because it's not a threat anymore. Not no pun intended. You don't have anything on Facebook. Well, what is that called again? Facebook audio something. I don't even know the name anymore. But yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to bring up on the case with X. So is X a Musk? I don't know, but it sure is interesting to
It's
see how
definitely
this is gonna develop.
definitely interesting. I guess we'll talk about this topic a year from now.
I
And
don't think even a year from now it's gonna be a few weeks or a few months,
no,
and
no, we're definitely
something is gonna
let's
happen.
plan it that we spent episode 175 on it again, like a full episode on X and where it stands compared to what we've just discussed. Any
All
closing
right.
remarks, Diego?
No, a last thing to say is check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/at Confoes, Confoes. Follow us on Facebook. No, not Facebook. Sorry. Follow us on Instagram and
Instagram.
Threads, Facebook related apps. We're going to see how X falls out and if we can get the Confoes handle there. But apparently, someone from 2013 has the handle and never posted anything. So I want to see if I can grab that handle. So, with that being
Awesome.
said, this was Social Confoes.
See you back here next week. Same place, same time. Bye bye.